What is good people? You are now listening to another episode of At the Plate with Danny Foxworth. I am your humble narrator, Danny Foxworth. And if you paid attention to the show on Wednesday, well, now it's Friday, and we got a low country legend, ABC News 4's own, Dean Stevens, back on. We're going to talk some baseball. So, Dean, pleasure
Yeah,
to have you back on, sir.
good to see you, man. Just tell me straight up, man. How did you become a Rangers fan? Let me just jump in right
Well,
away.
it's funny.
Give
I
it
get
to me.
this question all the time, but the biggest reason why I root for the teams I root for is because I wanted to pick a team that nobody else was rooting for. And
There you go.
especially growing up in Atlanta Braves country in the early to mid 90s, everybody and their mom is a Braves fan. And I just didn't want to do what everybody else was doing. And I was uh I was a big baseball card collector, and I was looking at I saw Nolan Ryan, and I saw his stats on the back of the card, and I was like, wow, this man has this is a storied career. And
Yeah.
he was in a Rangers uniform. And then
Mm.
around that same time, because where I lived was so rural, cable wasn't available in that neighborhood. So my parents said, let's put our nickels together and we're going to buy a satellite dish. And there was a station in Dallas. I can't remember what station it was, but they would always show a Rangers game on Saturday nights. And Nolan Ryan happened to be pitching that night. And he didn't have a particularly good outing, but the one player that really drew me to the Rangers was Julio Franco. And it's been on ever since. This was in 1993.
Man,
And yeah, that's my villain origin story.
that's good, man. I like that. I can respect that.
So,
For
what
sure.
were your earliest baseball memories?
Oh man, so I moved to Houston when I was like 4. And this could be crazy to you, man, but I remember going to the All-Star game in the Astrodome in '68.
Wow.
And I remember that because I remember a lot of different things I remember about that game. And you go back and it was a 1-0 game. And you go back and look at those lineups, man, McCovey and Mays. But I remember, I'll never forget Harmon Killebrew and how big he was. How big he was. And it's wild because I was at an event not too long ago. It was actually and George Brett was there. I was like, I'm gonna say hi to this guy. And in Charleston. And so we were talking about it. We talked about Harmon Killebrew, and he was like, "Man, that guy was a monster." So yeah, so I remember that that was my first memory, um, probably first baseball memory for sure.
And then you sent me some YouTube clips from Vin Scully.
Yeah, yeah. Did you listen to that yet? You probably
Yeah,
didn't. Went to today,
man,
right?
Vin Scully is awesome.
So that was so the backstory in that is that the album's called Dodger '59, and so my dad was living in California at the time, and he was a big sports fan. So he had this album called Dodger '59, and so when we were growing up in Houston, um, we would always listen to that album, right? A side, B side. And it was, through the years, it got scratched up. So you could hear like the quick, the scratches of it. But I grew up listening to Vin Scully even before I understood Vin Scully, right? And so yeah, so before my dad died, he had digitized that album. And so like I share it with everybody, but now it's somebody had posted on YouTube, I think 9 or 10 years ago. But so it chronicles the 1959 season, and the Dodgers went from worst to first, and they had just moved from Brooklyn to LA. And they talk about Roy Campanella, and he had been paralyzed, and they had Campanella night. They had this amazing Scully called this amazing rhubarb with they don't even call them rhubarbs anymore, do they? They should, right? So it was Leo DeRocher was the manager for the Giants, and Willie Mays had hit this line. And I don't know if you ever knew this, but like the Dodgers used to play in the LA Coliseum before
I
they
didn't
moved
know that.
to Bez Ravine. Google it, man. It's amazing. It's amazing. The Coliseum is like where USC plays, right? The
Hmm.
Trojans football. So there was a guide wire that hung down, and Mays hit this long home run that hit the guide wire. And so, dude, this rhubarb went on for like a long time, man. Listen to Scully call it was awesome. And then some of the Koufax games where he had struck out 17 guys, which back then was a lot. Um, so yeah, so I grew up listening to Scully, man. It was so cool, so cool.
So, when did you become a Houston Astros fan?
So yeah, I mean, I grew up in Houston, so from day one, my dad used to take us to go see the Astros in the Astrodome, and it was at the time it was probably the most special ballpark. Again, then I didn't know much about Wrigley, didn't know much about Dodger Stadium, but I mean, it was the first indoor stadium. I mean, they were the Houston Colts or the Colt 45s, and they played outside, man. And the mosquitoes, the size of freaking like cats, man, they're huge, they're nasty, they're all over the place. People complain about the weather in Charleston, like you got no idea about Houston heat or humidity, man. It is suffocating. And they played outside, and Joe Morgan was on that team, and
Really?
Robin Roberts played for the Colt 45s. And so, they moved. So that's when they built the dome. And it was called the eighth wonder of the world, man. I'll never forget, my dad had this special gift of like weaseling his way to the front of the line. And he'd give a cop, $5 or whatever at the time. And we'd always park close, buy the cheap seats. And, you'd walk in and you'd go up these ramps, you'd circle around the stadium, and then you'd walk into kind of the concourse level, but you had to open these doors, right, to get inside. And so two things would hit you. One, it was 72 degrees inside, right? So that blast of cold air, you're like, yes. And then all of a sudden, the AstroTurf, and all of a sudden you saw this beautiful green like you'd never seen before, man. And then, the dirt infield, the clay outfield. And it just was like, it was mesmerizing, man. And the colored seats. And the interesting part about the Astrodome was when they initially built it, if you look at the ceiling, you go back at old pictures, like there's panels in the top of the dome, and they were all clear, right? Because originally the Astrodome had real grass inside.
Oh, really?
Yeah, until what happened? Until they figured out they couldn't grow the grass inside the Astrodome,
Right.
right? And so that's when AstroTurf was invented. They brought this AstroTurf in, and so now they have a lot of the panels were covered up. There still were some that were not covered. So yeah, so man, I mean, um, yes, I mean, watched some of the great ball players come through there, and during the times, the old Giants and Mays and McCovey, and the Big Red Machine. They were so good and so easy to hate. Um, Dodgers had all stars at every position. Um, my one of my fondest memories, and you talk with your guy about this, man, is I'll never forget. I showed up on there's Monday Night Baseball, right? So back in the day, like Monday Night Football, there would be Monday Night Baseball.
Didn't know that.
And yep, Monday Night Baseball, and I can't remember what year it was, but it was J.R. Richard against the Reds and Tom Seaver pitching for the Reds. It was awesome, man.
Wow.
It was great. It was great. So yeah, just a ton of memories, man. A ton of memories, playoff games, and it was good stuff. But again, it was about just being around family because I don't. Baseball's the best places to hang out with your family, right? You just get to talk, and it's really super cool. So, do you ever like when you go to games? Do you ever keep score the old-fashioned way?
You know what? I haven't, and that's something I promised myself that I was going to start doing this season. So I already
That'd be
ordered
awesome.
the scorebook, and this is going to come in, I think, this weekend. So I'm going to
I,
start doing that this season.
I saw you went to a Citadel game not too long ago, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's cool.
yeah.
You
It
gotta
was when
call
they
me when you
played
come to town, man. I'd love to go with you.
yeah, played St. Bonaventure. It was chilly as all outdoors, but I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah,
still
yeah.
enjoy myself. Baseball's back, so I was happy.
That's awesome, man. That's good. That's good.
So who were some of your favorite Astros players, past
Uh,
and present?
so, so growing up, man, so growing up, we had they had this thing called the Astro Buddies, right? So it was a club, so you'd sign up, you pay your $2 or whatever. So my Astro buddy was a pitcher by the name of Larry Durker. So Larry Durker was, I think he came up in the majors. He was 19, number 49. I still have my Astro buddy Larry Durker card. I do.
Really?
I do. I
Wow.
do. Um, so he was my favorite. Yeah, he was my guy. He was turned out to be one of the best pitchers for the Astros ever, behind Ryan, and then I mean, we've had some pretty good pitchers come through, but he was dominant. And then he was ended up being one of our managers. So he was a really successful manager. Um, so yeah, he was the guy. And then Cesar Cedeno, your guy was talking about Cesar Cedeno the other night, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting there listening to the podcast going, I don't remember when. He came up, he was 20 years old, man. He was fast, he could hit for power, he was a five-tool guy. And I remember sitting at our kitchen table with our transistor radio and listening to him hit for the cycle one night with my dad and my brothers. It was cool. So yeah, he was really special, and then, as you get into the Jose Cruz days and, we're a scrappy bunch of guys, man. Scrappy bunch of guys.
So what were some of your favorite Strohs moments?
Um, the 80s, every one of them we lost. So it don't count, does it? No, so growing up as a kid at the 1980 playoff game against the Phillies ended up winning. And the 86 series with the Mets was epic. People can just look that up, man. Just epic, epic, epic series. Again, we lose that, and of course, the Mets go on and how they do against the Red Sox, right? The Buckner game. And then as I got older, and then having kids and stuff, watching them win the World Series and then watching them win it again. My oldest son played baseball at George Mason. We went up there when they played the Nationals, and fortunate enough to get tickets to all three of those games in Washington. That we won every single one of those games, but then we ended up losing all four at home.
Oh,
Remember that? Like
yeah.
horrible, heartbreaking, right? So I mean, it's like like the Rangers, man. It's hard, but I don't really like. I got buddies who are Ranger fans, but they're Cowboy fans, so they got plenty of rings, man. They got plenty of
Right.
championships. I don't feel bad for them, like not one bit. The Astros struggled for so long. We were so terrible for so long. Oilers never, ever went to the Super Bowl. The only time they went to the Super Bowl was when they turned into the Titans. Remember that?
That's a good point.
Right? Rockets, we won two championships with the Rockets, but what happened those 2 years? Michael Jordan didn't play,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the OJ chase kind of spoiled it all for us too
During the finals. Yep.
during the finals. So, yeah, but so, man, it was just, yeah, it was a special places to go. And we used to hang out down by the bullpen, and the bullpen were down along the first base side. And there weren't a lot of people to go to. We just go hang out down there. Stretch Suba was our bullpen catcher, and he'd always have chewing tobacco. So he'd throw us a pack of chewing tobacco. We just sit down there and watch everybody. And, you bring up Nolan Ryan, man. We used to go down there early just to watch him warm up because the pop of that catcher's glove was like nothing you ever heard before.
Yeah.
True story.
So who were some of your favorite non-Astros players?
Um, so non-Astro players, I was a Strawberry fan because I used to like the Mets a little bit. So I love watching those Mets teams play. But I don't know. My wife probably would say I have a problem, but when it comes to competition, man, I'm not a fan of really anybody. I want to beat everybody. But I remember, now I'll tell you this. I do remember watching George Foster play,
I don't remember him.
outfielder for the Reds. He was one of the very first guys to ever swing a black bat. And he used to knock the absolute crap out of a baseball. Big time, right? He was like one of those guys like, uh-oh, here he comes. He was with the Reds. Um, I distinctly remember watching him play. We didn't get to see a lot of American League games. So it was mostly National League guys. But I do remember going to the Braves games when they would come to this Astrodome. And I remember Dale Murphy going off one night and people were like, God, look at this young guy, you know? And so, that was super cool. And then, working at Channel 4 and covering the Braves, I was fortunate enough to be there when all of a sudden who shows up on the mound, right? I don't care what anybody says, but you can't tell me that you find a better pitching staff than Glavine, than Maddox, than Smoltz, than Avery, right? No, not zero, zero. So watching those guys, and being a baseball fan and having the opportunity to be close and watching that stuff go down and watching them play, man, during the playoffs was unbelievable. And I mean, you go back and look at the stats we played. The Astros played them in the first round for like 4 straight years. I don't think maybe we won one game, right? Biggio and Bagwell hit like a combined like 047 because like, everybody did. Nobody could hit those guys, right? So, those were going back and kind of combining those two deals is that, watching the Braves play was so awesome. During those times, and Terry Pendleton just hitting the baseball. I remember watching Tony Gwynn come to town, just hitting the baseball. Watching his batting practice was like one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. Because I swear to God, it was like he wants to hit 5 balls just down the right field line, 3 inches fair, and he would just like right. Watching Ozzie Smith take infield practice, awesome, awesome. Um, we had one year, it was the Padres Braves playoff game, rain delay, extra innings, finished like at 1 in the morning. It was late, and Ken Caminiti hit either a game winning home run or like big RBI, right, to end it. Now, Cammy, he went through some issues, man, with alcohol and drugs, and my mom knew him pretty well and helped him through those times, being an alcohol drug counselor. So I had never met him, but after that game, again, it's like 1:30 in the morning, like there were not too many reporters hanging out, and I went to the Padres locker room. I went up and introduced myself, told him who I was, and he was like, we just had a really awesome moment. And I said, I'm going to be back down here going live tomorrow. If you're around, man, I'd love to talk to you live. And he's like, yeah, man, for sure. No problem. Right. So it's literally Channel 4 out of Charleston. These are playoff games, right? Channel 4 out of Charleston going live. Fox Sports, ESPN, all the big guys are like standing there, right?
Wow.
And Caminiti comes walking. I'll never forget this. Caminiti comes walking out of the Padres dugout and like goes to ESPN and goes, hey, can we go live with you? And he's like, no, I'm good. Right? Fox Sports, hey, can we go live with you? He's like, no, I'm good. Atlanta Station, no, I'm good. Comes over and like talks to little old Channel 4 out of Charleston. It was so cool. It was super
Man,
cool.
that's awesome.
Yeah, good stuff like that. Ron Gant, man, he was awesome, wasn't he?
Man, that was
Dion,
my
you want to
guy.
know my best? You like Dion? Do you like Dion Sanders?
Yeah.
You a fan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're there when he's doing the whole Falcons Braves thing, right? And so we were there for the playoffs. And so he's jetting in, he gets done like playing, he comes and plays that Sunday night. And so we get in to the locker room after the game, right? And there's a ton of people standing around. Now, one of our superpowers was like we were always going to figure out how to be like in the very front of wherever we were, right? And so my photographer knew that we were going to figure it out, right? We just watched how the crowd would move, and I was like, "There's our angle. Let's get to the front." So we're literally standing in the very front of Dion's locker, and everybody's like crowded around. It was awesome. And Dion comes in, and then we start asking questions. And on his locker, he's got like 4 numbers. Like 1 is yes, 2 is no, 3 is maybe, 4 is like none of your business, right? It's just hanging there. We have no idea why it's there. People ask questions. He goes 1. Somebody asks a question. He's like number 3. Somebody asks another question. He's like 4. And that was it, man. The dude did not say a word. That's all he said. It was
Wow.
wild. It was wild.
Man's efficient with his words. I'll give him that.
Man, it was crazy. So, Maddox was something else, man. He could pitch. It was awesome watching those guys a lot. I told you a little bit about covering them in the World Series, which was a really cool moment. So yeah, baseball's been a big part of our lives for sure.
And then when you sent me that picture of you were interviewing Reed Ryan
Oh
and
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
the old school. This was when the River Dogs were still playing at College Park. That was
yeah, yeah. It was.
and you took me back with that
How
pick.
about that
So
jacket he was wearing, man?
yeah.
It was that purple and teal. It
Yeah,
was
teal
so.
was that was the hot color back in the early 90s.
It was cool, man. And so the funny thing about him was when I was working in Abilene, my first TV job, there was a guy named Bill Gilbreth, and he just kind of hang around the high school baseball program that I was covering. And he'd always throw batting practice to these guys, and I'd always go up there and hit against them because he used to pitch for the Angels and the Tigers. And he came home because his mom got sick, right? And so he'd stopped playing. But his roommate and one of his best friends was Nolan Ryan with the Angels because Ryan came up with the Angels, right? And then traded to the Mets for Fergosi. So anyway, so Gilbreth, we got to be good friends, and he would come on my Sunday night show, and we were just like, we just go talk baseball and stuff. Really knowledgeable guy, super good dude. And so one night they were talking about changing the balk rule. I don't know, it was some random stuff for like some dorky sports guy to be talking about. But I was like, do you want to talk about this? He goes, you know what? I don't know anything about it, but how about this, man? Give me a phone. He's like, let's just call Nolan. We'll ask him. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? He goes, yeah, we'll just call Nolan Ryan real quick. I'm like, here's the phone, right? I'll explain the long distance charge later to my boss. But he called him literally right there in my sports office, got to talk to him. He was awesome.
Wow.
He was awesome. And so I remember I was shared that story when I was interviewing his son. And he pitched for the River Dogs for a very short time. Didn't pitch here very long, if I remember right. But yeah, it was super cool, man. But you go through, and I know you talked a little bit about some of your favorite River Dogs, right?
Hmm.
Um, it was. Let me get. Tell me again. Who was it? It was. Oh,
Delman Young.
Delman Young.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that was right on the heels of B.J. Upton.
Hmm.
He was here, which was right after
Yep.
Josh Hamilton and Carl Crawford,
Yep.
right? And that was, I mean, you had Crawford and Hamilton on the same River Dog team because Josh was their overall number one, and then Crawford was first round compensation pick that year. And he was like, I mean, he had scholarship offers all over the place for football, basketball, and baseball, right? And the only other person I know that happened to was Dave Winfield, right?
Yeah.
So, so yeah, man, watching those guys play and then watching Hamilton in the All Star game was crazy, just crazy. Um, just such pure talent, right? And then the demons took over. So
Yeah.
sad.
You're right.
Demons took over. Who's the best baseball player you ever seen in person?
In person. Oh, it's actually Josh Hamilton.
Probably, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing him when he was with Texas. And I went when they played who did they play? They played the Orioles in Texas. This was back in '09. And I think he was like 4 for 5 that night. I mean, he was on fire.
All over the field too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you talk five tool guys. That was a five tool guy. You don't see a lot of five tool guys.
Yeah.
With the speed. But man, he was pretty special. So, did you ever go see games at the old ballpark, the old River Dogs on Rutledge?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
Used to go there. We used to take field trips there when I was in elementary school.
no way.
Yeah, and I remember seeing Roberto Alomar and Carlos
Really?
Baerga play there. This was like 80, it
Yeah.
was either 86 or 87.
And is that when Sandy Senior was the manager, and then
Yeah.
Sandy Junior played on that team as well,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Carlos Baerga,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
David Combs was there when it was the Royals, right? I mean, you go through, I mean, just on and on forever.
Yeah. I think it was the Royals were a little bit before my time. I think they
Yeah, for
became the
sure.
Rainbows in '85. And they
Yeah.
were the Royals prior to that.
Now, didn't I see you like garbed out and swagged out in rainbow stuff?
Yeah, I was looking all over for that jersey and I happened to find it on eBay and I
Did you
swooped it up.
really?
Yeah. And dude sold it for like $30. I was like, I had to.
That's a bargain.
Yeah.
I'd love to see what your closet looks like, man. What's your best piece of memorabilia that you would never sell?
Best piece of memorabilia. Goodness. That's a great question. Well, it's worth nothing now, but I had a mint condition. It was a 1975 Mike Schmidt card,
That's good.
and I saw it on eBay, and they're selling it for like $3. I'm like,
That's pretty good.
yeah, but that's probably the most well, probably the
Dude, that
oldest.
rainbow jersey's pretty damn good, man.
Yeah.
You wouldn't sell that.
Oh, absolutely not. Because I went back on eBay and I didn't see it again, so I'm like, yeah, I'm keeping this.
I saw Andrew Jones when he was with the Rome Braves playing the River Dogs at the old College Park, right? And
Hmm.
I so if nobody if you're watching this, you've never been there. Beyond the left field wall is a street, right? Street runs back there, a bunch of trees, and then beyond that street is a park. There's a basketball court in that park, and that dude hit a home run over the fence, over the street, over the trees, over the over the basketball court. It was the longest home run I've ever seen. It was
Yeah, that
crazy.
that man was super talented.
You know what else happened there one night when we were there? So back in the day, there was out in right field, Charleston police used to have their horses back in the stables, right? When they had horse patrol, and they would keep them in these stables, part of the park, just beyond right field of the River Rock Stadium, right? And so, um, the officer on the horse we used to patrol that area down Rutledge and the side streets and stuff. But one night there was a huge fight on the field, huge, like massive for baseball. And all of a sudden, in the right field corner, the two big gates open up because usually that's where they take the big turtle out for batting practice and stuff.
Hmm.
There's two gates open up, and here comes that cop on a horse onto the field, right? Just goes right between the players and breaks up the fight. And back that was back in the day when CNN Sports had their play of the day, right? And that was the play of the day. That was always a big deal if you get your video play of the day. It was like you got a cop on a horse breaking up a fight in a baseball stadium in a minor league park. Boom, done.
And
You
what
know,
are the odds of that happening again?
zero. It was so cool. It was super cool. You got any autographed baseballs? Do you do those?
The only autograph I ever got was from Mookie Wilson.
Oh man.
Yeah, my mom, she used to be a CAT scan technician and she would go to different hospitals different days of the week. So basically her territory was like Bamberg, Barnwell, Allendale, Hampton, Edgefield, like that territory. And so it was one winter, we were on winter break and I rode with her to the Bamberg hospital. And sure enough, after she finished her CAT scanning duties that day, we're walking out through the front office and Mookie Wilson comes walking in because he's from Bamberg. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm starstruck. And
You
I
knew
was
who he
like,
was.
can I get your autograph? And he was like, sure. And he got a piece of paper from off the front desk and a pen and he signed it for me. And I
That's
mean,
awesome.
he couldn't have been cooler.
If you could have one autographed baseball of anybody, who would it be?
Ricky Henderson.
Oh,
He's my all-time favorite player.
is he really?
Yeah.
Man, he was such a disruptor,
Yeah.
wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think he
I mean,
played it the right way too, man.
he could draw walks. I mean, stealing bases, getting runs,
Lead off
the
home run.
just the flair that he had.
Man,
I
that's
gosh, he refers to himself in the third person.
he
I'm like,
does.
I'm sold.
All right, well, let's just jump right to it, man. I know you don't really want to talk about it, but I'll bring it up. So, um, tell me about when the Astros win the World Series, and then it comes out that they were banging on a trash can. Tell me your thoughts as a baseball fan, not as my new friend, because we're always going to be friends. It's okay.
I wasn't mad. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And they got a ring out of it. So I I couldn't be mad at the attempt.
Yeah, yeah, it fires some people up, boy. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But then coming back and win it again, I think. I mean, to me, that was everything. They came back to win it again. So, but yeah, I think that stuff's been going on for a long time. But it doesn't make it right. But I do like to ask people that question though,
Yeah.
especially baseball fans. You know, and I tell you what, I just hope everybody keeps on booing Jose Altuve because he just keep on raking. I never seen anything like that, man.
Yeah, me either.
The bat looks bigger than he does. He just swings it so well. So you still a Braves fan?
I I'm not really a Braves fan. I just I do keep up with them just because they're close to home and because they were the first baseball team that I watched because I would spend weekends at my grandparents' house in Somerville,
Love that.
and they had cable. So every
Mm.
night, 7:05, it was appointment viewing, just sit in front of that big ass Magnavox TV and watch the Braves every night. And that's Dale Murphy was my first favorite player.
Dale Murphy was
Yeah. And I will remember going out in the
chipper.
front yard and finding the biggest stick I could find and just emulating his swing.
So I got a great Dale Murphy story for you.
Let's have it.
So Murphy was one of the guests. He was the guest speaker at a River Dogs hot stove banquet one night, and so I was fortunate enough to be asked to MC it. And so I got to sit next to him, right? And so I just sit and watch. And people were coming up and signing stuff, and they were just so polite. And he was so gracious, man. Such a good guy. And then somebody asked him about his kids, and one thing led to another. And so I asked him, I said, if you don't mind me asking, like, who was the best out of your kids? Who was the best baseball player? Because somebody had to follow in dad's footsteps, right? And he goes, man, my oldest son. He goes, he had the best hands. They were soft, they were quick, twitch. They were like, he was awesome. And I go, oh my gosh, did he play? He's like, no, hated the game. I go, hated the game. And I go, well, what's he doing today? And he goes, he's an artist. He draws.
Wow.
It was so awesome, man. And he was so proud of it. He was so proud of him. And those were like, dude, there were some times, and again, just so blessed to be able to do stuff like that. Um, one year, and it was like after Sam's accident in '05, so it must have been '06. And so they asked me if I wanted to come do it. And I was like, yeah, man, I'll help you guys out. I love doing that kind of stuff. And Jim Bouton, who wrote Ball Four, which was like the very first book written by a player to kind of expose what was going on in locker rooms. It was a very controversial book. He pitched for the Yankees, also pitched for the Astros. And so he sits down, and the GM of who's Dave Eccles is sitting like right to my right, and then Bowden's to my left. And so I introduced myself to Mr. Bowden, and I said, I'll be introducing you tonight. He's like, oh, that's great. And he's like, did you write something up for me? And I said, yeah, I've got a little script right here I worked on. And he's like, well, let me take a look at it. And I go, I'm not going to let you take a look at it. Right. And I go, why would you want to look at it? He goes, oh, I'm sure you just like rip stuff off the internet. So let me just like edit it for you. And I'm thinking, no. I go, no, I'm not going to let you take a look at it. And I'm not going to let you edit it. And this time Dave is like going, what's going on over here? I could see a little bit of friction going on here between my guest speaker and my MC. Like, do I need to step in? And I said, I tell you what, I'll make you a deal, Jim. How about this? How about you just tell me what you want me to say? And he goes, sure. He goes, why don't you just say, here's the asshole who wrote the book? And I said, no problem. I got that. Right. And so he kind of turns away, and Eccles leans over and he's like, please, please don't say that. And I said, I never would, and I didn't. I flat introduced him. And then, he went on and he told, and it kind of pissed me off, to be honest with you, but he told like a 5-minute story about the book, told a 5-minute story about Yogi Berra and stories about Yogi, which I'm thinking, I could have ripped that off the internet. And then he told like a 5-minute story about Mickey Mantle and his drinking problems. And that really pissed me off. I was like, who are you, man? I was so pissed. Anyways, but that was it. And so the funny part was, like, in this script, I had stuff that he didn't talk about, right? Like Jim Bowden invented. So I literally got there. I was like, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Great information. I go, I got a script right here. And there's a bunch of stuff in here you didn't mention. I go, did you know for a fact that Jim Bowden actually invented Ballpark Chew, the bubble gum? Who knew? So I had a bunch of those things. I just read them off. Like, right. I was probably a creep and shouldn't have done it, but there was a lot of good information there. But he was great that night. Murphy was great that night. Jeff Francoeur was awesome. He was so,
Frenchie.
he was so great, man. And remember how great of an arm he had? Like that dude could throw a missile. And so I was doing a Q&A session with him. And so some little 9-year-old kid said something about how hard do you throw a baseball? right? And so he was like real humble about it. And I just kind of said, I'll tell you right now, the guy could throw. I go, you know what? I go, you want to see him throw something? The kid's like, yeah. So I give Frenchie a dinner roll. And I go, Frenchie, and like all the way in the back, there's like an exit sign. I go, nail the exit sign. And I'll be damned if he didn't wind up and sail that roll all the way across. He missed his sign, but he still did it, man. It was awesome. Smoltzy was one night. He had a great story about how he got set up when he was a rookie. He was in DC. And he talked about how the veteran pitchers took him out one night. And then they told him, like, you got to jump in this fountain as part of the ritual. So, jumps in some fountain in DC. And then, like, the next day, they're like getting ready for the game. And this cop walks in. And he's like, I need to see John Smoltz. And Smoltz gets up and he walks over. This cop makes a big scene that he went into this national monument. And it's a federal law that you can't get into fountains. And we have surveillance video. And I need you to turn around because we're going to handcuff you and take you out. Right. And it was a total prank set up by the veteran pitchers who brought this cop in to pull it off, man. It was so awesome. It was a great
That's
story.
funny.
That's where baseball, man. I don't know. What do you love so much about baseball?
Thinking what drew me to it was I love the chess game between the
Mm-hmm.
pitcher and the batter, and even between the pitcher and the catcher and the batter. It's like, all right, this pitch didn't work. Let's try this one. Pitcher's like, nah. Then you go to option B. Okay, well, let's try this pitch. And then the batter's in the batter's box. I'm like, and he's thinking, okay, he threw me this pitch. I'm going to anticipate this pitch to be this. And I just love that chess game between the batter and the battery, and then the infielders, they're having to make defensive shifts and stuff. It's like a game within a game.
Yeah, it is.
And I
So
was always drawn to that.
do you like the no shift change or did you like the shift?
Um, I'm I'm not really bothered by it, to be honest
So you
with
like
you.
it either way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. It didn't bother me. But it's funny because anytime that you'd have like one guy on the left side, right? And it's a left-handed hitter. And like the average baseball fan would go, well, just hit it over there. Why can't you
Hmm.
just hit it over there? And the answer is, well, because the ball's coming at 98 miles an hour, it's moving like a wiffle ball, and you got a split second to be able to time it up to hit it the opposite way.
Yep.
And what percentage of baseball players could do that? Right? Probably under 3%.
Yeah.
Right? And so that didn't bother me. That didn't bother me too much. But I do like, I like to watch the second baseman, shortstop make long range plays. Those are my favorite plays. And so when you have the shift, you don't get to see that, right? My favorite play in baseball is when the second baseman charges all the way down the right field line to catch like a ball just about fair or foul. That's going to drop between the right fielder and the first baseman. I love to watch that guy come across and make that play. Because our favorite player, my favorite Astro was Biggio. I loved watching that guy play baseball, man. He was so awesome. And then he did it, as a catcher. And then he
Yeah.
did it as second baseman. And then he gave up his second baseman spot for Jeff Kent and moved to center field. Like, who does that? So yeah, he was cool to watch. And but yeah, good stuff. I love the fact that it's timeless too. You may never go home.
Yeah.
Right? You may never ever go home. It's like awesome. And we would never, my dad's deal was, man, we're never leaving before the final out. Ever. Ever. So it's pretty neat.
So now I got a four-question segment
All right,
for this this one here. So
let's go.
question number one.
Yep.
Who are your three favorite swings from players not named Ken Griffey Jr.?
Oh gosh. Um so I loved watching Joe Morgan, right? He came up as an Astro and was part of like one of the worst trades in baseball history, right? Astros traded him to the Reds, and we got Lee May at first baseman. We gave them Cesar Geronimo. Your guy was talking about that the other night. and it was awful, right? But I loved to watch his approach, man. He had that back arm, and he would flap it just like this, and then it was like bam. And then again, watching Tony Gwynn was I loved watching Tony Gwynn swing the bat, and I love watching Altuve. Those three.
Question number two. If you were a player, what would your walk-up music be?
Oh my God, so awesome. Probably Rihanna.
Hey, I love it. I
You may
love it.
tell you, you may tell you, you may tell you a great walk-up song story. I think it's a great story. So my oldest son played 4 years at Charleston Southern, and then he went up to George Mason, played for 2 years. So his fifth year, he redshirted here his freshman year. So we go up. His fifth year was ended up played 19 games, and COVID set in. He came back for his sixth year, right? So we go up for his final game, and so I go up to the booth, and I go, "Where's the audio guy?" He's like, right here. I introduce myself, tell him who I am. I go, we're going to change up my son's walk up songs. Right. So we have this long standing tradition in our house. My wife and I, one of our first dates, we went to see Les Mis, the musical, at the Gilliard, like in 91 ish. Right. So every time we go on trip with the kids, that was the first thing we'd play. We'd play the entire soundtrack of Les Mis. They hated it. Right. So the very first song when he walked up for his very first at bat in his last game as a college baseball player, it was to Les Mis' One More Day. Right. And so it's like, and coming up to bat, number 32, Jack Longshore. And he's like tapping his cleats and he's doing the whole routine. And all of a sudden it's like, one more day to go. And it, dude, he's like, I'll send you the clip. It's on YouTube. He like turns around, he looks around and he looks at us and we are dying, man. And then the next one we did, and so the next at bat, same thing, but we changed it to, I got you.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So first one was Les Mis, second one was Hit the Road Jack, and then the third one we changed up to the Captain Jack song from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Nice.
So, but if it was mine, it would be like a Rihanna song. Yeah, I'm a big Riri fan. How about
Uh,
you? What would yours be?
man, my walk-up music would be Rigor Mortis by Cameo.
All right, there you
Love
go.
that record.
That's awesome. I'll listen to it tonight. Love that.
Um,
All right, what else you got?
so on the last question. Well, actually, no. Question number three. What's your favorite MLB ballpark?
Ooh, great question. Man, that's so hard. So I've not been to some of the iconic ones. I've not been to Wrigley. I've not been to Fenway. Um, but I've been to Dodger Stadium, and Dodger Stadium is pretty badass. Um, but I got to tell you, man, I love PNC Park in Pittsburgh a
That's
lot.
on my bucket list.
It's really bad. It's really cool, man. Um, yeah, it's just the way it's situated, man. It's a beautiful ballpark. Um, I don't like the Braves' new stadium. I don't. Have you been there yet?
Haven't yet.
There's too many textures. There's a lot going on. It's not like a classic ballpark, and not like it's got to be like Three Rivers or Riverfront or the Astrodome, where it's just a big circle, right? But it's just there's like brick layers out there. There's like wood. There's a hotel. It's kind of weird. I didn't like it. I went to the Rangers' original stadium, which was kind of dumpy, and it was so hot, right? But I'd love to go to see their new place. But I went to the Rockies this past summer. That was pretty cool. But I think in Pittsburgh for sure.
Good call.
What stadiums have you been to?
Um, I'd say my favorite ballpark is Kansas City, Kauffman
Oh,
Stadium. I love this stadium.
really?
Yeah, it almost feels like, how do I put it? It's almost like a quadruple A stadium to me.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, I love that. And then the water fountains in center field. That I always dug that. But I've been there, been to Well, when it was Turner Field. Of course, the Rangers.
Have you been to the Rangers' new one?
Not yet. I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to it though because it's got a roof.
yeah, it does.
Been to St. Louis. St. Louis is really nice too. And
Nice.
then my least favorite ballpark is Tampa.
Terrible.
It's like watching a ball game in a warehouse. It's horrible.
Don't they have plans to build a new one? I mean, they must.
Yeah. I think they're supposed to build it in supposed to be finished in 2028.
And isn't it amazing? I think that franchise is amazing to me because every year they're right there.
Yeah.
And their payroll is like 72 million,
Yeah.
right? Do you have any hard feelings about the Yankees? Like definitive feelings about the Yankees?
But the Yankees, no, I don't.
Don't bother you?
Mm-mm.
Like to see them lose?
I'm indifferent. I mean, however whatever happens with them, it's inconsequential to me. So
You know Soto's going to end up hitting 240 with like 28 home runs. That's about it, right?
yeah, he just might.
They think he's going to hit 320 with like 52 homers. Can I? All right, give me one more question. I got to tell you one more baseball story. Did you have one more question?
Oh no, that's it.
All right,
Oh,
I got to tell
actually, no, 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 no. I take that back. You're right.
you. Come on.
Who was a player that you thought would take the league by storm and they just didn't pan out?
Ooh. Um, that's a great question. You know, I thought I thought Springer would take off, man, after he left us, but he just, he's been an average center fielder for them. Um, the game has changed so much. It's changed so much that um, probably yeah, I don't know, probably Springer off the top of my head. But then when I wake up at 4:20 this morning, I'm gonna figure it out. And I'm gonna send you a text. I gotta tell you my favorite baseball story, one of my very favorite ones, right? And then we'll go because I could do this all night long. Um, I take my oldest son Jack to New York, and after I think it's like his senior year maybe, so I surprise him with a trip to New York to go see the Yankees and the Astros in the new stadium. So so it's super cool, man. You get off the train and like Yankee Stadium's right there. It was pretty wild. And so we had gotten tickets through a friend of ours who was associated with the Yankees. And so we have to go down to like the ticket office and you go to the separate one. And so in this particular office, it's like, Astro families pick up their tickets here and then Yankee people pick up their tickets here. But you're the same small office, right? And so we get there before the family tickets arrive. And so we're talking to this gentleman, and his son plays for the Astros, right? His son is JD Davis, plays for the Mets now. And JD had a great career, college career, and he kind of up and down with the Astros, but he really had nowhere to go, because Bregman was at third, um, Gurriel was at first, and so he was just kind of stuck there. So anyway, we start talking to Mr. Davis, talk for like 20 minutes, super nice guy. And so JD gets to start that day, like his first start at Yankee Stadium ever. And so we're sitting like with Yankee people, first base side, up a section. And like directly across the field, we can see where all the Astro people are. And JD Davis's first at bat, it's a home run at Yankee Stadium. And so we look over and we see his dad celebrating, right? It's just like this cool moment. I was like, man, we were just talking to that guy like an hour ago, right? It's super cool. So anyway, game ends. Astros win. Astros win. Astros win. And so I was like, I told Jack, I go, man, we need to walk over there and just so I can go congratulate Mr. Davis. It's a really cool moment, right? So we walk around the concourse. And by this time, all the Astro family had gone up to the concourse area, right? So we see Mr. Davis go up and congratulate him. We're like talking stuff, blah, blah, blah. And at that point, like somebody says, all right, let's go. And so there's a security guard in front of us, the side of us, and right behind us. Jack and I are the very last people, right? We got all of our Astro gear on. So they think that we're like part of the Astro crew and family members. We have no passes. We just got hats, shirts, whole 9 yards. And so I look at Jack, he looks at me. We're talking to Mr. Davis. We start walking, and my son's like, "What are we doing right now?" I go, "I think you know what we're doing right now." And so I look ahead, and because of like covering the Braves for so long, I know that there's certain places you can and can't go, right? And so there's a huge like delivery elevator, and we're walking right to it. And I know where we're going. We're going to get on that elevator, and we're going to go down to the bottom of Yankee Stadium and go see the players, right? That's where all these families go on. So Jack's like, I don't know. And I go, here's the deal. If you don't want to go, just peel off, go to the bathroom, or right behind you, man. And he goes, nah, let's go for it. I go, okay, let's go for it. So we literally keep on walking. We get to the service elevator. Service elevator opens. We all get on. Service elevator closes. Jack and I are like, this is awesome. Right? This is just like 3 years ago, man. So sure enough, we go down, elevator opens up. We're like at the very bottom of the stadium. We walk along and we get behind this rope. And all of a sudden, like 10 minutes later, here come the Astros. Like all, they've changed clothes the whole 9 yards. And they're all walking up to this rope saying hey to their family. Like, so like Altuve, Springer, they're all like right here. Like they're like right here. It was so awesome. And then Garrett Cole is walking by and I go, Garrett. And he looks at me. So there was a guy that I used to do sports with here. His name is Dan Potash. He was my weekend sports guy in the early 90s. No, I take that back, mid 90s. And he left here and got a job in Pittsburgh. And he's still in Pittsburgh today. So he does all of the pregame, postgame show for like Pirates, Penguins, whole 9 yards, right? Still one of my best buds. And so I knew he and Garrett Cole were tight. And I said, I'm buddies with Dan Potash. And Garrett Cole walks right over to us and has like a 10-minute conversation with us, man. It was so cool, right? And it's those little things. It's just that little thing. You're like, that's a good dude, right? Now, when he left us to go sign with the Yankees, he wasn't a good dude, but just for a minute, right? But it's just like those little things in life that you just never forget about something. It's kind of nice. So anyway, so that's the
Man, you
story,
got
man.
some awesome stories, man. Seriously.
Yeah, you live long enough, man. You get them.
It's a good
You get
point.
them. I got to tell you, man. But what you're doing, man, I think is so awesome, dude. It's so awesome. Like when, and again, we talked on Wednesday, right? I want to do a podcast takeover, and I want because I got so many questions. Like, when did you start wanting to do a podcast? Like, how did that start?
Man, I was making guest appearances on other people's podcasts, and I started getting so much like great feedback from my family and friends, and then eventually they started asking me, "When are you going to do a podcast?" And at that time, I was like, "Nah, I don't. I really don't want to. I just want to be the lefty coming out the bullpen whenever they call me." And then the more I did it, the bigger that itch became. The itch just became too big to ignore. And then at that point, I was like, okay, I think I want to try my hand at doing my own podcast, but what do I talk about? So my rule of thumb was look and see what everybody else is doing and do the opposite. Like they're going right, you go left. So I had all these different subjects and all these different topics that I wanted to talk about on my podcast. Was this for since we last spoke specifically, and I would just keep them in my phone. I was like, I mean, I'll be at work and then a topic will just pop up in my head out of the blue. I'm like, oh, I don't think I heard anybody bring this topic up on the podcast. So let me write this down and then I'll just say this for future reference. And for at the plate, I baseball is my first love. And for me, especially like in the black podcast universe, I didn't really see a whole lot of baseball
Mm,
podcasts. So I was like,
mm,
that might be my lane. And then I saw my other Twitter friends that enjoy baseball as much as I do. And once I saw that a lot of them root for different teams, I'm like, I think I got my lane. And
nice.
so I reached out to all of them back in, this was like late 2022. And I told them I want to start a podcast. I want to start like January of 2023. And this is what I'm going to do it about. And I would love to have you as a guest. And all of them said yes. And so I just started setting up schedules to do the episodes, and I dropped my first episode on January 13th of 2023. And now here I am. This is episode 102.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's amazing. And you love doing them.
I do. I look forward to doing it.
And you edit it all. You do everything.
Yeah, I do it all myself.
Yeah. And I saw a picture of your setup today.
Yeah.
It's a good setup, man.
Thanks, man.
How did you figure that out? Just Googled what
I
you got to
just
do?
I just took out one of my old guest rooms. Just took one of my old guest rooms and just emptied it out and then just made this the studio and
Nice.
just would add just started adding all just a lot of wall art just piece by piece. I see a good chunk of the stuff that I have hanging in my wall. I just went to Goodwill on a weekend and I was like, I like this, I like this, I like this, and I'll just buy all of them and eventually my wall became covered.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
And you got fish in there that are alive or they dead?
Oh, they're alive. Yeah, I changed my tank water. Matter of fact, I need to change it this weekend.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And and I know you've talked to your parents on your other podcast. They must be so proud. That's awesome stuff.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, man.
Yes, sir.
Well, we're gonna go to a game soon, and I'll reach out to you.
Please
Um,
do. I'm looking forward. I'm all in.
you're all in. My
Yes.
oldest son's going to do the so he's got a podcast, the Pencil Talk podcast.
Yep.
You
I'm
heard that?
familiar.
Yeah. So he's flying down to Houston this weekend to go do so they got a college, it's not really a tournament. I don't even know what you call it. There's 3 days of games. So there's 6 teams. So there's Texas, Vanderbilt, LSU, Texas State, maybe TCU. So he's going down there to cover that. Um, Kind of weasel his way and figured out, that's what he wants to do, man. He loves doing it. Went into Omaha this summer. Got a press
Nice.
pass, drove out there, interviewing people with his pencil. It's amazing.
Yeah, I saw Scott Eisberg post a picture of you and him covering the CSU basketball game. I was like, look at that. That's
I
awesome.
know. I know. Maybe we'll do uh maybe we'll do college Charleston game Thursday night if you're around basketball.
Yeah. All right. I'll
Oh,
see if my schedule permits.
I'll hit you up.
All right.
All right, man. I appreciate you very much, man. I'm proud of you, and I'm glad that we share the same zip code every day for at least 8 or 10 hours.
Yeah, greatly appreciate you having you back on. And again, listeners, thank you for listening. Make sure you like, download, or subscribe to At the Plate with Danny Foxworth. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find my channel at Danny Foxworth 843, where you can find all the video versions of all my podcast episodes for this podcast, as well as my other podcast since we last spoke with Danny Foxworth. And for Dean and myself, it's been another episode of At the Plate. And until next time, y'all be good. 3 strikes.
Oh,